I had always thought that our marriage was solid until my wife Karen started talking incessantly about her new friend. At first, I took it as harmless chatter, just a friendly joke with a coworker. But soon, her casual mentions turned into lively, almost secret conversations that made me question everything. Now let's find out more about what was going on. I always believed that my marriage with Karen was rock solid. We'd built our life together on trust, shared dreams, and the simple comforts of everyday routine. Yet, over the past few months, a curious change began to creep into our conversations, a recurring mention of someone Karen called her new friend. At first, I dismissed it as harmless small talk, a friendly reference to a coworker or a neighbor. But as the days went by, the frequency and the peculiar enthusiasm with which she brought up this mysterious friend started to gnaw at me. It began subtly. During our morning coffee, as I poured my cup and Karen scrolled through her phone, she would casually remark, "I had the funniest conversation with Lisa this morning, she's just so vibrant." I smiled, nodding along, thinking that a little work banter was perfectly normal. But then came the evenings when she'd linger on every detail, how this friend had shared an intriguing anecdote, how they'd laughed together over something only the two of them seemed to understand. There was an unmistakable sparkle in her eyes when she mentioned the name Lisa, and her tone carried a hint of something I couldn't quite decipher. Was it admiration, envy, or perhaps something else? As the weeks rolled on, the references grew more frequent and more personal. Karen began to introduce topics in our dinner conversations that revolved entirely around this person. "Lisa told me the most interesting thing today," she'd say, her voice laced with excitement, as if recounting a secret that could change the world. I tried to brush off the feeling of unease, convincing myself that it was natural to form new connections, even in a long-term marriage. After all, people evolve, and friendships do too. But the nagging sensation that something was off refused to leave me. I started to notice small, almost imperceptible details, a lingering smile when she thought I wasn't looking, the way she would check her phone for messages at odd times, and a slight change in her routine that coincided with the appearance of this friend in our lives. Late one night, as I lay awake in bed, I recalled the soft, conspiratorial tone in her voice when she recounted a story about a spontaneous road trip she had taken with Lisa. There was an intimacy in the way she described the day, the shared jokes, and the quiet moments of understanding that felt too deep to be just ordinary camaraderie. The more I listened, the more my mind spun with possibilities. Was Lisa simply a delightful new acquaintance, or was there something more, a hidden layer of connection that Karen wasn't willing to reveal? My thoughts churned with scenarios both mundane and wild. Had Karen found in Lisa an escape from the pressures of everyday life, a kindred spirit who could understand her in ways I couldn't? Or was it something else entirely, a spark of an emotion or attraction that I had been blind to all along? I began to recall fragments of past conversations, trying to piece together when and how this friend had become so significant. There were moments I'd almost forgotten. A late-night chat over the phone that Karen described as life-changing, a wistful pause when she mentioned meeting Lisa for a walk in the park on a rainy afternoon. Each memory was a small thread in a tapestry of suspicion, weaving a picture that hinted at a secret world just beyond my reach. And then there was the tone of her laughter, genuine, unguarded, and sometimes tinged with a vulnerability that I hadn't heard in years. It struck me that the more she spoke about Lisa, the more distant Karen seemed to become, as if she were retreating behind a veil of memories and unspoken desires. I wrestled with conflicting emotions, a deep-seated fear of betrayal, a pang of jealousy that I couldn't quite shake, and a desperate need to understand what was truly happening behind the casual mentions of a friend. By the end of one seemingly ordinary day, after yet another animated conversation about Lisa's quirky antics and insightful advice, I found myself standing in the hallway, the weight of my thoughts pressing down on me. I realized that something had changed, a shift so subtle yet so profound that it threatened to unravel the fabric of our relationship. I wasn't sure if Karen's new friend was a harmless companion or the harbinger of a secret I was not meant to know. But one thing was clear, the mystery behind these incessant mentions demanded to be unraveled. I ended that day with a mixture of confusion and determination. I knew that to understand what was truly going on, would have to dig deeper, to look beyond the surface of casual conversation and into the heart of the matter. And so, with a heavy heart and a mind full of questions, I embarked on a journey to uncover the truth behind Karen's new friend, a journey that would take me down paths I never expected and force me to confront not only her secrets but my own vulnerabilities. After that first day of unsettling conversations, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more behind Karen's constant chatter about her new friend. Determined to find answers, I began a quiet investigation into the curious world that she seemed so eager to discuss but never fully reveal. My mind raced with questions. Who was this friend really? What did she see in this person that could spark such animated discussions? And why did every mention carry a tinge of mystery that left me both intrigued and alarmed? I started by retracing our daily routines, paying close attention to the moments when Karen's tone would shift. Mornings at breakfast had become a sort of ritual. As I sipped my coffee and scanned the news, she'd scroll through her phone with a secretive smile. Once, while I pretended to read the paper, I noticed her glancing at a message thread that she quickly minimized when I looked up. It wasn't overtly suspicious, just a small, fleeting detail, but in hindsight, it felt like a tiny crack in an otherwise flawless facade. Determined to dig deeper, I began casually asking about Lisa, using the name Karen had mentioned most often. "So, what exactly does Lisa do?" I asked one evening over dinner, trying to sound casual while my heart pounded in my chest. Karen's fork paused mid-air, and her smile faltered for just a fraction of a second before she recovered. "Oh, she works in marketing and has this knack for making every day exciting. We just click on a level I never thought possible," she replied, her tone effusive but edged with something I couldn't quite define. The way she described Lisa was almost reverential, as if this friend were more than just a colleague or a neighbor, almost like a secret muse. I pressed on, feigning casual curiosity. "Have you two met up recently?" Her eyes darted away for an instant, and when they met mine again, there was an almost imperceptible tightness around her lips. "We had lunch last week," she said, then quickly added, "It was just a friendly catch-up, nothing more." That was all I got, a simple, guarded answer that didn't quite satisfy the growing questions in my mind. My suspicions grew, and I decided to explore further without alerting her to my true concerns. I revisited old social media posts, searching for any clues about this enigmatic Lisa. To my surprise, I found a few posts where Karen had tagged someone with the first name Lisa, accompanied by smiles and seemingly candid moments. But there was something odd about them. There was a filter on these photos that gave the images a dreamy, almost ethereal quality. It wasn't the natural warmth of our usual snapshots together, but rather a polished, almost staged representation of a life that Karen seemed eager to associate with Lisa. Late one night, unable to sleep, I scrolled through her public profile on a social platform. I noted that while she had dozens of friends and hundreds of posts, Lisa's appearances were too frequent and always seemed to carry an air of secrecy. There were subtle hints, a shared joke in the comments, a knowing glance in a selfie, that suggested a bond beyond mere friendship. Was this relationship merely platonic, or was there something deeper at play? I couldn't tell, but every discovery only deepened the mystery. On another occasion, I overheard a hushed conversation as I passed by the study where Karen was on a phone call. I couldn't make out the words, but I distinctly heard her mention a meeting later in the week, something about finally clearing the air with Lisa. That phrase, clearing the air, struck me as ominous. Had there been tension between them before? Was something unresolved lurking behind those friendly exchanges? With every piece of evidence, my inner turmoil grew. I felt torn between the desire to confront her and the fear of what I might uncover. Each new clue was like a puzzle piece, hinting at a picture I wasn't sure I wanted to see. Was Karen simply forging a new friendship that revitalized her spirit, or was she entangled in something that could jeopardize everything we had built together? I ended those restless nights with a mind buzzing with uncertainty and a heart heavy with the burden of unanswered questions. The clues were there, scattered like breadcrumbs through our daily life, each one urging me to follow the trail further, deeper into a world that my wife had clearly kept hidden from me. With every passing moment, I realized that the truth behind her new friend was a riddle wrapped in layers of secrecy and unspoken desires. And I knew that if I wanted to understand, would have to take the next step into the unknown. Over the next few days, my curiosity transformed into a relentless pursuit of answers. The clues were too scattered, too deliberate to be mere coincidences. I decided it was time to take matters into my own hands and follow the trail that Karen's every mention of Lisa had left behind. Late one rainy evening, I noticed that Karen's phone buzzed more frequently than usual. Her eyes would light up when she checked a new message, and she'd smile in a way that hinted at secrets too delicious to share. Unable to contain my growing anxiety, I discreetly installed a tracking app on her phone while she was in the shower. I told myself it was a harmless precaution, a way to understand her whereabouts without making accusations prematurely. The next day, I watched in disbelief as the tracker revealed an unusual pattern. On several afternoons, instead of heading to work or our local cafe, Karen's phone pinged from a part of town I barely recognized, a sleek, modern district filled with upscale boutiques and quiet parks. The coordinates led to a nondescript building that I hadn't seen on any of our usual drives. My heart pounded as I realized that her secret rendezvous might be happening in plain sight. Unable to quell my determination, I decided to stake out the location one afternoon. I parked my car a few blocks away from the building and watched as a woman in a stylish coat walked briskly toward the entrance. I couldn't see her face clearly, but something about her confident stride and the subtle way she clutched her phone told me she wasn't just passing by. The building's facade was unremarkable, but a discreet glass door near the side entrance caught my attention, a door that seemed designed to admit only a select few. I waited, hidden in the shadows, as minutes turned into an hour. Finally, Karen emerged from the building. She looked surprisingly relaxed, almost invigorated, as she stepped into the cool evening air. I followed her from a safe distance, my mind racing with possibilities. Was she meeting someone for business? A new hobby? Or was it, as I feared, something much more personal, a clandestine meeting with someone who wasn't meant to be a part of our life? My suspicions were confirmed when Karen entered a small, chic cafe tucked away on a quiet side street. I parked a little further and peered through the window. There, seated at a corner table, was a woman with striking features and an air of mystery. They greeted each other with a familiarity that spoke volumes, a warm embrace, soft laughter, and an exchange of words I couldn't decipher from my hidden vantage point. For a moment, my heart sank. This wasn't a casual acquaintance, this was someone Karen looked forward to seeing, someone who clearly held a significant place in her life. Unable to control my impulse any longer, I left the car and approached the cafe cautiously. I stood outside, pretending to wait for a friend, while my eyes fixed on the pair inside. Their conversation was animated, punctuated by occasional touches that hinted at a bond that went beyond mere friendship. I strained to catch snippets, mentions of meeting again next week, references to our last talk, and a few words that suggested secrets being shared. Every detail added fuel to the fire of my growing suspicions. In a moment of reckless abandon, I decided to call Karen. My hand trembled as I dialed her number, wondering whether I should confront her immediately or play the long game a little longer. Before I could decide, the call went straight to voicemail. My mind churned with anxiety and a dark mixture of jealousy and betrayal. Had I finally uncovered the truth? And if so, what did it mean for the life we'd built together? Shaken by what I had witnessed, I returned to my car and drove home in a daze. I replayed the evening's events over and over in my head, trying to piece together the puzzle. There were too many questions now. Why had Karen been so secretive about this friend? Who exactly was this mysterious woman, and what role did she play in Karen's life? And perhaps the most painful of all, had my worst fears about our relationship been confirmed? That night, I lay awake with a mind full of questions and a heart heavy with betrayal. The secret rendezvous, the whispered conversations in that cozy cafe, and the sight of Karen laughing with someone I'd never met had shattered the illusion of our perfect marriage. The truth was beginning to reveal itself in unexpected and unpredictable ways, and I knew that I was now at a crossroads, one that would force me to confront not just Karen's hidden life, but also the vulnerabilities in my own heart. The morning after that fateful stakeout, I couldn't shake the images of Karen's secret rendezvous. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I resolved that confrontation was inevitable. That evening, as the orange hues of sunset bled through our living room window, I sat Karen down. My heart pounded with a mix of betrayal, anger, and a desperate need for the truth. "Karen," I began, my voice trembling slightly, "we need to talk about Lisa. I know about your meeting last night." Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I saw a flash of panic cross her features before it was replaced by something unreadable, a mix of regret and resignation. She took a deep breath and said, "I never meant for you to find out this way." I pressed on, "Then explain it to me. Who is Lisa, really? What does she mean to you?" Karen's gaze dropped to her hands as she struggled to find the right words. "Lisa isn't what you think," she finally said in a hushed tone. "She's not a lover or some secret rendezvous. She's a friend who helped me when I was at my lowest." My mind reeled. The details I'd observed, the furtive messages, the late-night meetings, had painted a picture of a clandestine affair. But here, Karen's voice wavered with emotion as she continued, "I met Lisa at a time when everything felt suffocating. I felt invisible, lost in the routine of our life. Lisa listened. She understood me in ways I hadn't felt in years." I leaned forward, a bitter mix of relief and suspicion churning inside me. "Then why the secrecy? Why hide her from me?" Before Karen could answer, a sharp knock at the door startled us both. I got up to answer it, my mind still buzzing with unanswered questions. Standing on our doorstep was a striking woman in a crisp suit with an air of authority that immediately made the situation feel even more surreal. "Good evening," she said, her tone firm and deliberate. "I'm Detective Elena Parker. I'm here on behalf of the corporation that Lisa works for." Karen's face drained of color. I stood frozen as Detective Parker continued, "We're investigating an internal matter involving sensitive information, and your interactions with Lisa have come under scrutiny. I need to speak with you both immediately." I was dumbfounded. My worst fears of infidelity had morphed into a completely unforeseen nightmare. Karen's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "I didn't know. I mean, I never intended for any of this to happen." Detective Parker explained that Lisa was not merely a friend or a casual acquaintance. She was an undercover investigator, part of a larger probe into corporate corruption. According to the detective, Karen's casual, seemingly innocent friendship with Lisa had inadvertently exposed her to confidential information that put her, and by extension, our entire family, in potential danger. Lisa was gathering evidence against a powerful organization, Parker stated. And Karen, by sharing your personal struggles, became entangled in a situation much larger than a mere friendship. In that charged moment, a torrent of emotions crashed over me. The anger I'd felt for a presumed betrayal dissolved into shock and confusion. Karen's voice, choked with remorse, continued, "I was desperate, and Lisa offered me a way to feel heard again. I thought I could handle it on my own, but then the calls, the secret meetings, it all escalated beyond my control." I stared at her, torn between wanting to punish her for the deception and understanding that she had been lured into something dangerous by forces beyond our control. Detective Parker's arrival had upended everything I thought I knew about our lives. Instead of the extramarital affair I had feared, it turned out that Karen's new friend was at the heart of a high-stakes investigation, a twist I never saw coming. As Parker left with a promise to return for further questioning, Karen and I were left alone in the silence of our living room. The confrontation had shattered the simplistic narrative I had clung to. Now, instead of a secret love affair, I was forced to confront a labyrinth of corporate intrigue, hidden identities, and unintended consequences. In that raw moment of vulnerability and uncertainty, I realized that the truth behind Karen's mysterious friend was far more complex and perilous than I ever could have imagined. The betrayal I felt was now intertwined with a looming danger that threatened not just our marriage, but our very lives. After Detective Parker's unexpected visit, the air in our home felt thick with uncertainty and dread. That evening, as the echoes of her departure still reverberated through the silent corridors, Karen and I sat down together in our living room, trying to untangle the web of half-truths and secrets that had suddenly upended our lives. For hours, we spoke in hushed, trembling tones. Karen explained that her involvement with Lisa had begun innocently, a friendship born of loneliness and the desire to feel understood. Over time, as she confided more of her struggles to Lisa, she unwittingly became entangled in an undercover investigation. According to Karen, Lisa had been working with a team probing corporate corruption and unethical practices within a powerful conglomerate. The revelation was staggering. Karen's casual chats about Lisa weren't flirtatious escapades at all but were tied to an investigation that, if exposed, could have dangerous consequences not only for her but for anyone connected to the case. Still reeling, I questioned, why wouldn't you tell me any of this sooner? Why let it come out like this, through a detective's knock on our door? Her eyes filled with remorse as she replied, I was scared, and I didn't want you to worry about me getting hurt by something so big. I thought I could handle it on my own. I trusted Lisa to be my guide, to help me navigate a world I didn't even know existed. As she spoke, I couldn't help but feel a tumult of emotions, relief that the mystery wasn't a sordid affair, yet betrayal that she had hidden this dangerous chapter from me. My mind whirled with questions. What exactly was Lisa investigating? How had Karen become involved? And, most unsettling of all, what did this mean for our future? Later that night, unable to sleep and desperate for clarity, I began piecing together what I could from the scant details Karen had offered. I searched online for any mention of Lisa's work or of corporate scandals that might have been in the news lately. What I found was a series of cryptic headlines about whistleblowers, data leaks, and investigations into unethical practices by a major corporation known only by its initials, KMC. The pieces of the puzzle began to take shape. It appeared that Lisa was deep within an undercover assignment, gathering evidence to bring down a network of corruption, and somehow Karen had become a reluctant informant by simply sharing her personal struggles and insights with her. I recalled the moments when Karen's phone had buzzed incessantly, the furtive glances she cast at its screen. Perhaps those were not mere social texts but encrypted messages or updates about the investigation. A sinking feeling took hold of me as I realized that our lives had been invaded by something far larger than the confines of our marital troubles. The very notion that our personal space was now intertwined with a high-stakes corporate probe made my heart race with a mixture of fear and incredulity. When morning broke, the weight of our situation pressed down on us like a tangible force. Over breakfast, Karen hesitantly showed me a series of text messages on her phone, exchanges with an unknown contact who identified themselves only by initials. The messages were laced with caution and urgency. Phrases like, secure the files, and, need to confirm the next meeting, peppered the conversation. Karen's fingers trembled as she scrolled through them. I never meant for you to get caught up in this, she murmured, voice barely audible, but now that you know, I need you to understand that my friendship with Lisa was my way of reclaiming a part of me, and protecting us from a threat I couldn't see coming. I struggled to process it all. The betrayal I once feared from an extramarital affair had morphed into a far more convoluted scenario, a labyrinth of corporate espionage, hidden identities, and unintended consequences. My heart ached as I considered the possibility that, in our pursuit of closeness, Karen had inadvertently exposed both of us to a dangerous world of secrets and power plays. And as much as I wanted to lash out in anger, I found myself compelled to help her navigate this perilous territory. That afternoon, I confronted my own conflicted feelings. I realized that the real enemy wasn't the absence of affection or the idle chatter about a friend, but the invisible forces manipulating our lives from behind the scenes. Together, Karen and I resolved to work through the fallout of this tangled web. We agreed that honesty had to be our only path forward, even if that meant facing down the shadowy figures and high-stakes intrigues that now loomed over us. Our conversation ended with an uneasy truce: we would support each other and seek more answers, no matter how deep the rabbit hole went. But as I watched Karen's tear-streaked face, I couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. Was Lisa truly on our side, or was there another twist waiting in the wings? And most hauntingly, had our marriage been irrevocably changed by forces beyond our control? The day ended with more questions than answers, leaving us both to grapple with a reality that was rapidly spiraling out of our grasp. I knew that the next step was inevitable: we had to confront the mysteries head-on. The investigation, the hidden messages, and the uncertain role of this enigmatic friend all beckoned us toward a final reckoning that promised to change everything. The morning after our tumultuous conversation and the shocking revelations of corporate espionage, a heavy silence settled over our home. I awoke before dawn, my mind still reeling from the images of Karen, tear-streaked and conflicted, and Detective Parker's last ominous words. Something deep inside me knew that the answers we had been chasing were about to collide with truths even more explosive than we could have imagined. That day, Karen and I agreed to meet Lisa one final time, to face the mysterious figure whose presence had upended our lives. The rendezvous was set at a discreet, upscale lounge in a part of town where neon lights met shadowy corners. I had no idea what to expect, but I was determined to learn the full extent of Lisa's involvement and to finally piece together the tangled web of secrets. When we arrived, the lounge was nearly deserted, its dim ambience punctuated only by the low hum of soft jazz and the occasional clink of glassware. At a secluded table near the back, Lisa waited, her expression guarded yet tinged with an air of resignation. As Karen and I approached, I could see that the lines of stress and uncertainty had deepened on her face. There was no warmth in her greeting, only a wary acknowledgement that the moment of reckoning had arrived. "Thank you for meeting us," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. Lisa's eyes flickered with a mix of determination and regret before she spoke. "I know you have questions," she began, her voice steady. "I never intended to hurt either of you. I was sent here on an assignment, a mission to expose a corrupt conglomerate known only as KMC, which has been involved in money laundering, data theft, and unethical business practices." I exchanged a glance with Karen, whose eyes shimmered with tears and a hint of relief. "Then why involve my wife?" Karen asked softly. "I trusted you as a friend, and now I feel betrayed all over again." Lisa's gaze dropped momentarily. "Karen, from the moment we met, I recognized your struggle. I saw how lonely you felt, how trapped you were in a routine that was slowly strangling your true self. I promised you I would help you reclaim your voice, your identity. But I never imagined that the stakes would grow so high." She paused, drawing a slow breath. "The messages you received, the secret meetings, they were part of a larger, covert operation designed to gather evidence against KMC. Your personal insights, the things you shared with me in confidence, provided crucial leads. I had to be discreet to protect you both." My heart pounded as the reality of Lisa's words sank in. Everything, the furtive glances at her phone, the encrypted messages, the unexplained trips, now formed a mosaic of unintended consequences. The revelation was layered with conflicting emotions: relief that Karen's so-called new friend was not a paramour, shock at how deep we'd been unknowingly entangled in a dangerous investigation, and lingering resentment at the secrets that had festered in our marriage. Just as the conversation began to stabilize, the lounge door swung open with a burst of cold air. In walked Detective Parker again, this time accompanied by two uniformed officers. His face was unreadable as he approached our table. "I'm here to finalize the investigation," he announced. "KMC has been alerted to our probe, and their operatives are moving in fast. You both need to come with us for further questioning, as your testimonies and the evidence you provided are now vital." The atmosphere turned electric with tension. Karen clutched my hand, her knuckles white, as I felt a mix of dread and a strange sense of closure. "Lisa," remaining calm despite the gravity of the situation, added, "This is our chance to expose the corruption once and for all. I promise you, everything will come to light soon enough." As we were led out of the lounge, the final twist emerged, one that none of us had anticipated. In the chaotic flurry outside, amidst the flashing lights of police cars and the murmurs of onlookers, I noticed a familiar figure disappearing into the crowd. It was someone I had seen only in passing, a shadow from our past whose presence now hinted at yet another hidden layer in our story. Who was this enigmatic person, and how did they connect to the vast network of deception orchestrated by KMC? The question loomed large in my mind even as the night swallowed us into its dark embrace. In that moment, standing on the precipice of a new, uncertain chapter, I realized that our lives had been irrevocably altered by forces far beyond our control. The secret that Karen had once casually mentioned, a friend, who turned out to be an undercover agent, had unraveled into a high-stakes drama of corporate corruption and personal redemption. Our marriage, tested by secrets and betrayal, now faced a crossroads. Would these revelations bring us closer as we fought against a common enemy, or would they fracture us beyond repair? With Detective Parker's words echoing in my ears and the weight of the unknown pressing down on us, I knew that the final chapters of our story were only beginning to be written. And as I glanced at Karen's tearful yet determined eyes, I couldn't help but feel that despite the chaos, the truth was our only hope for reclaiming the life we once knew.